Hi guys, Garage RC here, back with another video. So today's video is a video all about my new drift track and reviewing how the XRX Red Edition and the DWX3 with the alloy shock upgrades performs on the track. So it's kind of a triple review, but as is always with everything else, if I don't get round to making the video, if I try and do on each individual thing, it takes me forever. So I thought I'd combine it all together. If you like what we do here, guys, please subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and let's get on into this review. So I'm going to start off with first the XRX, which is, sorry, the DPA Sport. What we've got here is a newer version of the DPA Sport, which is a standard all alloy edition. It doesn't come with motor or electronics, but everything is pretty much alloy. So we've got alloy bulkheads, alloy upper and lower arms, swing arms, slider mounts, gearbox, everything I think except the rear lower arms is alloy. You also get an alloy motor pinion and an alloy spare gear mount. So this car differs from my standard setup. As you can probably see, I have reversed the arms to give me a maximum camber. So now when I turn in, you can see there really is quite a slope on the wheels. This really does change the characteristics of the car. It depends on your personal taste, but you'll see in the footage later what it's done for the car. As you can see, I have mounted the electrics to this car pretty much all to the back, so it's backward weighted. This is a GL Racing sensored speed controller. You can see I've mounted it at the back, in between the two magnetic mounts for the body. May I add, this RX7 body was one of the hardest bodies I had to mount with magnets, partly because of this screen. Initially, I tried to mount the magnets on the back here, and it just didn't work. I finally gave in and put tape on the inside and then put the magnets exactly underneath the glass, and that finally gave me something that was easy to adjust so I could get the heights correct with the magnets. I've also developed a better way of putting these magnets in where I tape over and glue over them so they can't come out again. So this actually makes it easier to remove the body, so their magnets are underneath this tape. I'm going to do the same with all my magnets in the future, especially if I'm using these size magnets, which are quite strong. So it just enables it, it just makes it much easier to pull the body back off again. This is a body I painted myself, and I made a lot of mistakes, but I am really getting into this 1/24 scale painting, and I will be doing more on that. Back to the car. Okay, so what you can see here is, so again, sorry, to go over it again, rear mounted speed controller, receivers mounted over the gearbox, motors high mounted, so all the weight is over the back, plus we've got an alloy gearbox, so all the weight is here. The wheels we're using here I think are 1.5 offset each, 1.5 offset rear, 1.5 offset front. Everything else is pretty much as the kit comes. Obviously this is a just the black version of the V3 gyro that I normally use. I've mounted the battery longitudinally. The wheelbase of this car I think is 110. I will double check, I might be wrong. Let me just find my calipers wherever I've placed them. Right here. No, it's about 100, sorry. So yeah, it's an odd one, this one, because it looked like it would fit at 98, but it is just over 100 mil, so 100 mil wheelbase. Now, one of the great things about using a 1/24 scale body, it enables me to flip these arms the other way around to get that extra caster adjustment, so I can get that caster really far back, as you can see here. That is something I've done which improved the handling so that I could get really fast sideways sliding motions with this car. And the track, the way I've got it set up at the moment, these cars run very fast. I will be eventually waxing the track to do slower drifting, but as with everything, I like to experiment and play around, and I really did enjoy driving these cars and doing high-speed drifts. It was a blast. So overall, you can see the setup of this car is different to previous setups I've done for this particular model. And I keep coming back to it because I love the fact I can change the setup so much. I literally have completely transformed this car, I think 3 or 4 times in different versions. You may also notice I've got a slight bend in the arms that I use for the steering rods, and that just aids with getting that full lock, full Ackerman parallel, whilst getting this maximum caster angle. I'm using the AC11S CLS servo. I've got an alloy servo horn on as well. That's not standard with this kit. And one of the other things that I've got is the aluminium base plate, which is gorgeous, and I think that really helps the weighting of this car. So it's an older model car now. I think God Racing are developing newer versions to come later on, but I still have a lot of love for this car purely because I can do so much with it, and I have literally tweaked and tweaked and tweaked. So that was the setup for the XRX. Again, the suspension, I've actually made an extra adjustment on mine where the actual carbon fiber suspension mount, I've put slots in it so I can move it up and down. So not only can I adjust the tension from the springs from here, but if I'm changing the ride height by quite a lot and I want the travel to go higher, I can actually loosen these arm screws, slide the mount slightly higher to give more travel vertically. If I want the arms to be lower and I want the spring tension to stay the same, I can loosen these screws and just push the arm down. That's just an extra adjustment I put in, which makes it easier setting up the car. Guys, with these cars, and we all have our favourites, setup is everything, and I can't say that enough. Setup is everything, and a lot of it is personal preference as well. How you like the car to respond when you come off the gas, how you like it to respond if you lock the back wheels. This particular version has a ball diff, so it's actually got not a locked rear diff, which most of my other cars have. That again changes the characteristics of the car, and I think particularly for the speed racing that we were doing, it was brilliant. The track that I've got is 5 meters by nearly 4 meters. It's a custom build that I had done from Germany. I'll put a link in the description for the company. They're brilliant. They do standard sizes that are brilliant, and they shipped it across pretty efficiently. Okay guys, so that's my setup for the XRX DPA Sport. Let's have a look at now the DWX3. So guys, another amazing car which has featured in previous video with the same shell. Only difference I've done here is now I've upgraded the shocks. These are shocks from the Orlando, which I got from AliExpress. Now, one thing to point out, guys, and I don't know how I've done this, but I managed to get a set of shocks that come with an extra spring and a washer so you can make them longer. So they must be longer set shocks. And what I've found that has worked for me is longer shocks at the top here, longer shocks on the rear there, and the shorter shocks without the washer at the front. That is a setup that's worked pretty well for me. It gives the car more of a smoothness. The suspension is just smoother. I already think this is a great car. It has great handling, and I'll be discussing the difference in the handling of the two cars when you'll see the racing later, but they're both pretty good. Now, one thing that this car could do with that I haven't done yet is maybe put a more powerful motor on. I've got 6,000 kV on this car, and I think I've got 8,800 on the RX7 over there, the XRX DPA Sport. And this has got a standard brushless setup and not censored. The DPA over there has got the censored setup. That's purely just because I haven't had the time to change it up. But as it stands, they're both rear weighted. I mean, this car is brilliant because the weight really is at the back. But I've achieved a similar setup on my DPA Sport over there by moving all the electronics to the back and having a full alloy gearbox and moving the speed controller right over the back end. Okay guys, so that's the cars as they are now. Now I'm going to leave you with some footage of them drifting on the track. So apart from my usual footage, which is usually close-ups of them sliding around, this is more on the track, and I'll give a review of the track afterwards as well. So guys, here we are on the new drift track. You have to apologise for the cardboard in the back of this RX7. I had real difficulty with the magnetic mounts, and the body kept hitting the wheels, so the car was handling great, the body not so great, but I have dealt with this problem since. Anyway, the drift track itself, the actual layout is brilliant. I mean, this is a 5 meter by I think 3.4 meter. It's massive, but I had it specially made. They don't normally do it this size. And when you look from a distance, the detail on it makes it look like the real thing. I haven't put any extra details on the track yet. I will be, but the car, as you can see, handles pretty smoothly on the track. I think it's probably a little bit too fast for most of you guys that like drifting. I think it's a bit too grippy, but that's easy solved with some car wax. Here I've got the DWX3 doing some donuts, and to be fair, I mean, I actually enjoyed racing with the cars at this speed, but I think the more traditionalists would like to see a slower drifting, which I'll make another video on next time. You have to be careful when you're laying this track down, because anything underneath it will cause bumps. So little bits of grit on the garage floor had to be removed, had to be rolled up again, so be careful in that way, but otherwise you just roll it down and off you go. And considering it was rolled up and the size of the track, there were no creases in it, it all ironed out pretty well. All the marks you can see are actually part of the track. It's part of the sort of weathering look they give it, so that's pretty cool too. Yeah, I mean, it's everything I'd want in a track, really. It's laid out, the track is a good size, it's a nice circuit, challenges you, and it's got a nice long straight. Here you can see some racing now between the cars, and you'll get to see the different performance of each. Generally, with the DWX3, you had to hit the throttle harder. It was almost counterintuitive. You had to throttle harder into the corner to get the car to transition or come around, whereas the DPA Sport was quite happy to change direction easily. Both different styles of driving, both amazing, both a lot of fun, and I wouldn't say, you know, when we swapped cars around, it was just a case of getting used to each car, and once you did, you could win with that car. You could outpace the other one or outhold the drift. But yeah, everything that I said in the review previously about the car still holds true. As you can see from this footage, the track is quite big. I've got a double-sized garage, so this takes up a lot of space, but it's easy enough to deal with. You can walk on it, it doesn't get marked. I would just be careful if you are going to wax it, because it gets very slippy and that could cause accidents if you walk on it in your socks. I've had to warn the family to be careful when they're going into the garage at the moment. But this track isn't waxed at the moment. I've only waxed part of it, but I'll be doing another review with the track fully waxed. But there you go, guys, my first real attempt at proper drift racing. So more of this to come, and hopefully I'll be able to bring you some more slowed down drifting next time. So guys, you saw some action on the track. Let me fill you in on what was going on. So this car, which I love both of these cars equally. Honestly, I love the DWX3. It's brilliant. With the new shocks on, that little bit smoother. Since the last review, I forgot to mention, I've also upgraded the servo, so it's got the same servo as the DPA Sport there. It's the same AC11 CLS that everyone's using. Different handling on both of these cars. This car, you can really power tail slide, and it wants you to do it. It wants you to thrope the throttle and keep that back end out. A little bit harder on the steering and the transitions. Maybe that's because I need to reach you in the front end a little bit more. I don't know. That's something I'll play around with. But as it at the moment, as it stands, it was harder to get this one to turn in and change direction. But once you got it into a slide, in that sideways motion, you could really, really power slide drift, and it was a thing of beauty to really do. You got great satisfaction when you nailed it. It's just coming out of that slide and switching the other way around was a bit more work, a bit harder. But yeah, wow, beautiful, loved it. You could see, a lot of fun. Okay, I need to fix this spoiler. Right, okay. RX7 DPA Sport. Now, the DWX3 definitely has a longer wheelbase. I forgot to check the wheelbase. I've told you this before, guys. I'll just double check it again in case I get it wrong. I mean, this is closer to sort of 112, the wheelbase on this, 115, that kind of length. This is more like a 100, so it's 15 millimeters shorter. Big difference. This is almost 98 mil. It's that close. So it is quite a shorter setup, but wow. With the modifications I made, I was really impressed with how this car hit those sideways motions. Really, really good. Much easier to transition with. A little bit harder to hold the sideways continuously. It took a bit more feathering with the throttle rather than just full on blasting it. You almost had to feed it in as you were going along. But this car was much better at changing direction. It really, you could flick it around, and some of the footage without the shell on, you can see why that is. So the weight balance, actually let's weigh the cars. So with the body shell and battery, we've got 225 grams. Okay. So let's throw a battery on there because it actually hasn't got a battery in it. So about 215 grams. So this is a slightly lighter car. I think that's probably down to the aluminium base plate in the RX7 there. So similar weights. 10 grams is a big deal, but it does show the nimbleness of this car, that even with the extra weight, it was prepared to change directions whenever you wanted. It would do it. Now, a lot of you guys out there could see the drift footage was quite fast and the track was probably a little bit too grippy for your liking. Again, I'll be doing all this again with the track fully waxed up so we can see how things work on a slower down level. But overall, for me, I always test these cars on my kitchen floor, which is like glass. And honestly, the handling is sublime. Both are very beautiful cars. I love the body roll on the DWX3, and there's some features in here that give it a unique characteristics. This is an evolution of what I've been doing. If you've been watching my videos, guys, you've seen me playing around with the DPA Sport since I first got it, and I've got different versions. I've got a version which is nearly 120 mil long and 80 mil wide, and that again handles differently. It's what I like about the car. I love the fact that I can retune it, and this red edition comes with everything alloy, and I think there has been a criticism of poor plastics across the board. Some cars are better than others. Certainly the DPA Sport, some of the plastics were poor in the initial run. Obviously, I've got access to aluminium parts, and most of mine have all been upgraded. I love what I can do with this car. I love the way it races, and I'll be doing a lot more drift racing now rather than just reviewing the cars now that I've got a track. And I think that'll give a more realistic idea of how these cars perform. I think it's one thing me running around them on the kitchen worktop and showing you how they slide and handle, but it's another thing when you're actually racing someone, drifting against them under pressure, and when you make mistakes and seeing how the car recovers. So for me, you know, these are both great cars. You can't go wrong with either one of them, but I'd say it comes down to personal preference. If I had to choose right now, I'd probably still prefer my DPA Sport, and maybe that's not because it's a better car, but it's because I've been able to experiment with it so much and change things around, and I'm always looking for new ways to switch it up. The DWX3, the way the chassis is designed, it's harder to do those modifications, but it is a very complete car, and it does come ready built, which is pretty cool. So again, I think this is a spectacular car too. Really, really good. I love the way I love the way it transitions in terms of the weight transfer. It looks like a real car almost. Yeah, so two great cars, a lot of fun on the drift track. The track itself, brilliant. I am going to wax it up for the next video. Lots more videos in the pipeline, guys. Lots more special. I'm going to have my big 1/10 scales out as well. So, guys, if you like what I do here, give the video a like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys all next time.